So, hi, this is the podcast Guided Self Healing Fearless Living, and I'm Dr. Andrew Hahn, and this is our 60th episode. And today I'm really feeling, because I've already had a chance to talk with them, really lucky to have on two people who are running a conference called Healing ALS. And we have Patricia Tamowski, and Patricia is the principal researcher for Healing ALS. And she's interviewed over 40 ALS reversals and dozens of integrative and conventional medical practitioners. And she's publishing a Healing ALS, which is the upcoming book. And she founded Healing ALS and Healing Advocates along with her husband, Scott Douglas. And here is Scott Douglas sitting next to Patricia. And what I can say about Scott is that he's also worked closely with Healing ALS community for over 10 years. And what I really want to say about him, he has a wealth of background in television. And right now, his work includes being the director of Healing ALS, which is an upcoming docuseries, which I think is like really wonderful. So, and we're just meeting each other, and I'm going to ask some questions, and you guys can figure out who's going to answer them, because I have a feeling if you don't know how to work that number by now, in terms of like passing things off to each other, we're going to talk about marriage counseling. But anyway, so tell us, how did you guys get interested in ALS out of everything in the universe? Teach us.
Well, this all started with Alzheimer's, actually. Tish, her mother and grandmother had been diagnosed Alzheimer's, dementia, and we said that there's got to be something you can do about this. I know they say it's terminal, and just help them be comfortable as this disease progresses. And we said there must be something we can do. So we went ahead and started with, I took my background, which is, 30 years in journalism. I've done a lot of investigative journalism on health. And I said, let's go where the rubber meets the road. Let's get out, talk to people, interview them, and see what we can find out about this disease.
Well, back up a little bit, because before that I said, okay, I'm just going to look up omega-3s, B complex, B12, things that I knew were good for the brain. And let me just look up some vitamins. We'll give them to mom and try to slow things down. And then we found all these people online that had reversed Alzheimer's. Like they had dementia. They didn't know their children. They didn't know, they were forgetting everything. And then all of a sudden they got better. So we never heard of that. So that was the pre-story to that.
Yes.
And then we decided to go visit them, because we said, you know what, we looked at we met a 90, she was 90.
92,
I think she was 92 when we met her. And when she was 90, we looked at her neurological report, and it was cannot. She couldn't do anything.
She couldn't even feed herself.
And the court took over her. They said, okay, she had a court appointed guardian, because the sons couldn't decide who was gonna get their way taking care of mom. So they just appointed a guardian. And then 6 months later, can. And she deemed herself competent again.
Well, actually, the court deemed her back competent. And so she was able to take care of her own finances. She was able to take care of her own ranch and farm that the sons were probably about to take over. And it was amazing. So we knew Alzheimer's was reversible. And so what we did was go ahead and start traveling throughout the country when we find these reversible stories. Is this true? What did they do? We wanted to know all the different modalities of what took place with this individual. Well, before we know it, we started doing that with ALS too, because ALS just kind of came to us.
Yeah. Every time I did a Google search on Alzheimer's, I kept coming up with this book. It's called Eric is Winning. And he was diagnosed back in 96 or 92, way back a long time ago with ALS. And yet he was still around and doing very well. And he wrote this book called Eric is Winning. And so finally, I guess he must have had Alzheimer's as a keyword, because I kept finding it. So I finally just bought it one day. And I was looking at what we could do for my mom. And what that book did is it put it in 3 categories, because all these oxygen therapies, you're looking at what to do, right? And he put it in 3 categories, which
was positive mental attitude. That's something that's totally overlooked in allopathic medicine. Okay. And he did.
It was nutrition. Yeah, nutrition and supplements, detox, and PMA, positive mental attitude. Those 3 things, and all of a sudden, all these things that I've been researching could actually fit into one of these 3 buckets.
Mhm.
And if you look at nutrition, you're also talking about healing the gut and healing the liver, that kind of thing. But basically, when we talked to other people, and he had all these people that he was in touch with that had reversed ALS.
Mhm.
So we're like, wait a minute, that's really interesting.
Yes.
So we found people
Let's go
that
talk with
reversed
them.
Alzheimer's and
Mhm.
ALS. And we kind of just went across the country and filmed a whole bunch
Well,
of
we
them.
went from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, and we went twice back and forth across the United
Down to
States,
Texas,
coast
Florida,
to coast.
everywhere.
We zigzagged all through, doing the door knocks, talking, because my background, we have to go there, see, look, feel, get the evidence firsthand, interview, back to the basic things. And that's what was on my mind, to make sure that we knew firsthand that this was what was happening, because you don't hear this or see this anywhere else, not in media, not in, I mean, it was still considered terminal.
So we did find out why it's not on the news, that all these people have reversed these chronic diseases. It's because Big Pharma, you know, all these news stations, the media has like 25% of their revenues are coming from Big Pharma, at least. So they're never going to tell you about anything that doesn't involve drugs. And none of this involved drugs about people reversing. So we have about 170,000 views on a reversing Alzheimer's YouTube video. It's like how to reverse Alzheimer's in an hour. So we kind of took that and made like a
formed a nutshell.
Yeah, just in a nutshell, it's how to do it in an hour. And when we did a presentation in Florida, and we just summarized everything that we had learned when we were on our trip. And then we've also been doing this essentially for ALS.
Yes.
We have now like 40 ALS reversals. So we were guided, basically, forget Alzheimer's, do ALS. And I know that's crazy, but sharpagain.org is, we helped found them, and they are doing holistic healing for Alzheimer's. But I can tell you there's a reason why we're doing ALS. And ALS, we just kept, you get hit by a head in the head enough times, and you just work. So pretty much from 2014, 15, we pretty much
stayed
since
with
2015, we've been just doing ALS, no Alzheimer's at all. But what's happened in between is we have found probably well over 100 people that have reversed ALS.
We're talking gaining in functionality, not just sitting there, or progression. Now, there's categories we put them in. There's long-term survivors. There are those that are actually gaining in functionality. Those are ALS reversals in progress. And then we have ALS reversals that are out hiking the mountains of Utah with me. And it's like, wow, they are back. And so we've come across those in our travels for sure.
So we've had people with like 2 fingers of movement, and they're completely back. And with these same principles, nutrition, detoxification, and there's a little more. I would say emotional healing is a big one. Healing anything suppressed, suppressed traumas, you got to take care of them.
Exactly what you're familiar with.
Forgiveness. If you haven't forgiven anybody and everything, forget it. You're holding on to things. You're going to hold on to your disease too. It's just one of those things. So
funny how that happens, but
other people, like I look at healing, like I look at Mark Manchester, he was on a tracheostomy and a feeding tube. But this guy had the best attitude. Let me tell you, he was diagnosed in 2011, and he did a podcast. He did we have on Sundays, we have webinars. So he came to a webinar, and his presentation was how to have fun when you can't move, eat, breathe, or speak.
When you're
I want this webinar. I want to hear this.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
And they would go to football games. Like one time at a football game, they go to concerts, football games, but at the football game, there's a touchdown going on. And of course, he's dependent on mechanical ventilation. So he's got a tracheostomy, and he's got his backup machine. So anyways, all of a sudden, everybody's looking at the touchdown and
cheering the touchdown, everything. I think it was his wife, Lisa, that happened to glance over and look at him, and he was like blue in the face, 0 oxygen. The machine had stopped. It ran out of power. And so they had to hurry up, switch, get the backup machine on, all of that and everything. It's like, wow, his story is amazing.
Yeah, but now he walks a mile on the beach.
Yes.
Amazing.
So healing is, there's no question. There's a guy, so he's coming to the conference. There is and by the way, people can live stream the conference, and they can also watch the conference recordings afterwards.
Right.
So anyway, he's going to be speaking.
Yes.
Kim Cherry's going to be speaking. He
Oh,
did
we're
ozone
going to-
therapy to help him detox.
That's right.
He was, worked right. His office was right above a welding area. So remember, it's part mental and emotional and part physical. So when you get poisoned, people get mold poisoned.
Sure.
They get heavy metal poisoning from their fillings.
This is a
silver fillings.
multifactorial disease. There's so many different ways that people end up with ALS.
Yeah.
And we're going to have at least 10 ALS reversals telling their story at this conference.
Like walking around.
I don't know anywhere else in the world you're going to get that many folks who reversed ALS telling their story.
Well, my sense actually is, you can tell me if this is wrong, but I mean, I've talked to you briefly what my sense is about trauma and how that plays out in all kinds of different ways. But the other side of my life is I ended up with a really extraordinary orthomolecular doctor who, I mean, I assume you guys know orthomolecular medicine. Is that true?
Yeah.
Well, he was Linus's Pauling's only student on the East Coast. And, and this guy took all of Linus Pauling's work, and people came from all over the world with all kinds of horrific diseases. And just through supplements and detox and nutrition, they would get the most amazing results. And he unfortunately didn't train anybody because that was the way he was. But so I know the world you're talking about, not from the inside of being a medically oriented, but I know what it's like to have someone say, I can give you a fingerprint about supplements and about detox and about nutrition. And I know how to heal trauma. And I actually think I think what you say is true about everything, not even just ALS. It's, and those three things, that there's some kind of physical trauma, and which is what you're talking about when you're talking about, being poisoned, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's something about how can you most make your system, how can you be in relationship with it so that it can be exactly like you're saying, I'm going to care for my body like it really is a temple, by giving it exactly what it wants. And then how can I take care of what I would say is sort of like psycho-spiritual trauma? And what you're saying to me just makes me want to cry. I mean, and it makes me want to come,
Yeah.
I totally understand. And it's amazing up here. And I want to say it's more up here than it is physically here. At least 60% here, maybe 40% the rest of all the other physical diet and supplements. But this is so important because there are those who have gained in functionality. They have gotten better and then said, whoa, wait a minute. I can't get better. I don't want to get better because I have ALS. This is what has defined me. You know what I mean? And that breaks my heart because it's that sort of area to where this is my comfort zone. I'm complacent here. It's that complacency that I want to be in because I'm scared to branch out now. Do I have to now go back and get a job? Do I now have to face the world the way I used to? Those things are very important when you start healing.
But the physical part is also very, very important. We have people that are in mold. 50% of Americans actually live in mold houses with mold.
Yeah, mold is a big
It's
one.
crazy. So mold is huge. If you have a neurodegenerative disease and you're living in a moldy house, how on earth are you going to heal? The other thing was McFinn. He was down to 2 years movement. He was full of, now granted, he actually finally kind of cleared his pathways through energy healing.
Oh, yes.
But he also, his B12 was down to 200, which his regular doctor said, oh, 211, you're in the normal range. Then he went to a holistic doctor and he said, no, if you want to actually regrow nerve cells and neurons, you better be in the 800 or 900 range on your B12. There's a difference between optimal and quote unquote in range.
And visualize him. He can only move 2 fingers to move his electric wheelchair. That was it. And now he is back hiking now. It is amazing.
I really do have a question for you guys, because you're talking about the 3 things that I think affect everything. And you're certainly saying it affects ALS, which is, you have to detox, you have to really give your body what it needs, and you have to heal whatever trauma so that you can just be in a whole different relationship with whatever this is. Do you have a sense of why, in your experience, sometimes that plays out in ALS and sometimes it would play out in something else? Do you have a sense of
I
what
think it's
that is?
genetics. I think, like my family is
It,
very sensitive to Alzheimer's. So I started
it,
having Alzheimer's symptoms in my
it's
40s. So I think it's genetics. I think if other families, it's like cancer. So if my family doesn't have a huge amount of cancer, but we have neurodegenerative disease instead. So, so it might be somebody else's disease, somebody else's family, that's those same toxins are going to contribute and they're going to end up with cancer. Somebody else is going to end up with diabetes. Somebody,
a
that.
lot of
So
times
I think there's a genetic component.
there's a
Also,
mental genetic component too, because you could be carrying past traumas from something that's generational in that family.
well, stress also, like stress depletes magnesium. So almost all disease, Harvard did a study, like 95% of diseases are brought upon by stress.
Yes.
Well, stress, by the way, it depletes your magnesium, it depletes your vitamin C, it depletes
cortisol levels,
the minerals in your body. And also, if you think about this, in a stressful state, how is your body going to absorb nutrients? And how are your cells going to detoxify?
Yeah, you have to learn how to. You have to learn how to be in a whole different relationship with stress.
Yeah, I believe so. In order to heal, it's really all three. And you've got to also, we have 7 times the number of airline pilots. All right, so if you are in the military, because the military get a lot of vaccines and they're exposed to a lot of toxins.
Sure.
So you have, I think, 5 times more likely if you're in the military to get ALS than the regular population. But within the military, if you're a pilot,
yes,
you've got like another 7 times on top of that. There's
or
more pilots
aircraft
get ALS
maintenance
than any other part of the and
aircraft maintenance.
Yeah, probably aircraft. But we also get
The
radiation up
solvents
there
and
too.
all that. Yes,
So
a lot of radiation.
what we eat, and it's really strange that our food is so corrupted now. When you compare the diet in the 20s and 30s to our diet now, it's almost not real food. People aren't eating like real vegetables anymore and fruits, and
they're not getting the nutrients from the soil. We don't rotate our crops like we used to. When I was a child, we made sure we always rotated the crops to make sure. When I lived out on a farm, it was totally different than the farms you see today that are just manufacturing the same thing, and not rotating their crops and not getting the nutrients, depleting all those nutrients out of the soil.
That's true, because they don't know that the earth is a living being, and
right.
don't know that the crops are living beings. They treat it like they're just things.
Why are we putting glyphosate on living beings? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
Glyphosate is another big pesticides. Glyphosate is another big causative factor. And there's another piece of genetics. So we were talking to Dr. David Kennedy, he's a dentist. And he was explaining that if you have the ApoE4 gene, right, you're not very good at detoxing heavy metals.
You're not good at sweating
now, if you have the 2, so you have like a 2-3, you're really good. So you could have 20 silver fillings in your mouth, which are 50% mercury. So you could have 20 mercury fillings and be 90 years old and be just fine because you're a 2-3. So you're going to detox really well. Whereas if you're a 4-4 or a 3-4 and you're exposed to those same 20 mercury fillings, you're 1 in 10 people at 65 has Alzheimer's dementia, and 1 in 2 by 85. Why is that? Because our liver doesn't work as well. We're not detoxing as well. And there's this accumulation in our body. So I wonder. And so there's some genetics there.
Yes.
And so just because part of the population is more susceptible to another part doesn't make these fillings right. I mean, why they're still legal in the United States and they're putting them in our children.
Where other countries have banned mercury amalgam.
Why are they putting in our children? And they're 50% mercury. It's one of the most toxic substances on the planet, and we're putting it on our children.
Mercury in the vicinity of your brain's neurons goes back into neurofibrillary tangles that they find in deceased Alzheimer's patients. So why are we putting mercury so close to our neurons? So, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Right, it doesn't make sense.
So if you want to know the secret of how people heal, they do like 50 things. Like, honestly, they're taking a bunch of supplements. They're doing different detox protocols. They're researching what they're doing. They're doing a lot of things for their minds, for stress, for healing emotional trauma, for being positive. So it's kind of like, you might only be able to do 20 at a time, but the fact is you slowly but surely, and they slowly but surely heal. It's kind of, it's except for the people, there's one exception to that rule.
Uh-oh, what's that?
Prayer.
Oh, this was the curveball.
Prayer.
The curveball that came into us as we were doing our research. And we were out and about. We've actually come across those who have actually healed, and they healed during prayer service. They healed with everyone laying hands on them and praying for them, and they were actually regained their atrophy back.
And some of them did it slowly, and some of them did it quick. One of the people coming to the conference, he was healed in 2 minutes.
And so we were saying at first, no. We were saying that this is not, we were putting like, no, this can't be, they must be doing something else. We were kind of dismissing it, right? Until we started coming across so many more, and we could not miss those points.
So the first 16 ALS reversals we ran into, 4 of them were through prayer. And I'm like, okay, well, we can't throw away 25% of the data points.
Exactly. That was 25% of our data.
Even though you thought it was crazy, you said it may be crazy, but I have to look into it. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. So we have to. I mean, you have to look at prayer. Evie McDonald, who's coming to the conference.
Oh, yes, she'll be speaking. Yes.
She actually didn't heal through prayer, but how she healed. And now she was in a wheelchair within 4 weeks of diagnosis. The doctor gave her a year to live. 6 months into it, and you're interested in this because you're a psychologist. 6 months into it, she at that point she was in a wheelchair and she couldn't move.
But she had already prepared her funeral. She had prepared everything about how she was going to die. She was just determined. She knew that's what she was going to do.
She was writing, while she could type, at least she was writing journals on observational on how she was healing. She was observing herself dying. And then one day there was a switch at 6 months. Some friends took her out and she looked at a beautiful sunset and she says, why am I spending all my time dying instead of living?
But she was reluctant. She was angry at them getting her out of that. She would lock herself in the room and she was angry.
She wouldn't see anybody.
She didn't want to see anybody. I'm going to die. This is the way it is. And they took her out to a sunset. Just outside of Tucson, Arizona. I think it was a mountain up on the top of the mountain. And she watched and saw this beautiful sunset. They laid out food and a picnic for her and everything. And she realized, what am I doing? Life still can be good. Just like Mark Manchester, how to have fun when you can't even move. Right? So
she decided, okay, the doctor had given her 6 months, and she was a nurse. She believed the doctor. And she says, okay, what am I going to do with the last 6 months of my life? I'm going to make it the best 6 months. And she did a lot of self-examination. She realized that she was holding grudges. She realized that she did favors for people with expectation of reciprocity. So she has said, I'm going to give without any expectation. I'm going to start giving. So she was still able to talk. So I guess she was able to move her fingers enough to dial a phone. So she would make phone calls for this nonprofit because she said, look, I want to give and expect nothing back. But I want to forgive and expect nothing back.
The key on all this, she learned to love herself. She knew all this time she was not loving herself. She was not forgiving herself. She learned to love herself. And there was a big switch there when she did that. She looked at herself in the mirror and she just, what am I doing? What am I doing? I have to love myself.
So it's tough. It's tough. But anyway, I thought it was really interesting. The forgiveness. It took her months though to forgive. It wasn't quick.
Wow.
But what happened was at the end of the 6 months, she didn't die. And then she started getting better. Just from working with her mind.
Yes.
So she had a good diet. She was taking vitamins. She got her fillings out. So I don't want to say she didn't do anything on the physical level,
but
she did
years ago, before the good quote unquote diets were out there. So this was back in the 80s.
Yeah, this is early 80s.
And so it was mostly mental, not mostly physical.
So, but other people, it's been mostly they've gotten mold detox, they've done heavy metal detox, and they have slowly but surely healed. We one of the
I'd say out of all of our reversals, the mental still played probably the most important part. It changed their outlook on life.
Well, look at it this way. I can tell you why that might be so. Because the mental is ultimately about a kind of vibrational energy. It's not about matter, right?
Yeah.
And no matter what you do in your bodies, if you think about it for a second, even if you're doing something exquisite, you're still working in the world of matter. And you know by definition that the vibrations, higher vibrations, you know, if we believe Einstein is a beginning place, you say E equals mc squared, right? So you know that if you can do something vibrationally, theoretically, it's going to be a more powerful, potentially, intervention than working on the same level. Except for the fact that the same level, if you can raise the vibration of the same level a lot, right? Because if you're eating really healthy stuff as opposed to really unhealthy stuff, it's still the world of matter, but it's like a much higher octave of matter, right? But theoretically, which I have found, if you could do something enough to bring dense energy back into its pure form, which from my point of view is about self-acceptance, or it's the kind of things you guys are talking about. If you can find all the things you haven't accepted and you can find a way to be in a different relationship with them, I also have seen miracles just from doing that, which I get to see all the time, which is going to make me cry. So, and I think, what you guys have done is you've taken and you made it into a trinity and you said, look, there are three things that are going on here. And we don't have to, say anything is better than anything else. I mean, like, why not do everything?
You have to
Yes,
do everything. And the
everything.
reality is
Be
all of
open,
these
open
supplements
up.
that you're taking don't work if your mind is in a state of stress, because the
Right.
body can't absorb the nutrients and the body can't detox. So you could be on all these programs, they're
Right.
not going to work really well. But once you are in this parasympathetic state, then all of a sudden people can work. And energy blocks, I know Dr. Cowden's going to talk about energy blocks during the conference.
Yes.
We have some really top doctors talking. Even the gut is your second brain. So if you're under a state of stress, where do you feel it? In your gut. How can you heal your gut?
And the reason,
If you're worried, if you're anxious, if you're
yes, but a lot of folks say, well, that's just woo-woo. That's just, you have to approach it with an open mind. And the reason why, because those that have healed, it has usually been the least thing that they expected that triggered that healing. It wasn't what they expected. You have to have an open mind when you look at all of this. Even some of the toughest critics that we had at our last conference back in 2019, they turned around during that conference. It's like, oh my, I came here to criticize, and now literally came right up to me, shook my hand, and said, I thank you for what has taken place here in this conference. I came here as a critic, openly told me that, and it totally turns them 180 degrees around.
because this is all evidence-based medicine. I mean, it's not like it isn't.
Right.
These holistic doctors for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years have been practicing medicine, and it works. Just because it's not drugs.
Yeah, it's natural and holistic.
Oh, that was the other thing.
It's not quote unquote standard. It's not, but you have to be open mind, because that healing always seems to take place with what you least expect is going to help trigger that healing.
Well, now you're in my world because I've been doing that for 30 hours a week for 30 years. And if I told you some of the reasons, some of the things that traumatize people, because that's why I call it life-centered therapy. That's why we call it, you have to open to everything. Everything. All possible reasons that you have the trauma, all possible resolutions. And if you open to everything, you find the most amazing stuff is why people are stuck. And
Yes.
you know how to determine it very quickly, which we do. Worlds open up, and I've seen things that are, in moments that are truly miraculous. I mean, and I told you before we were on, I told you one of the stories, but I've seen things that make that story really pale in comparison. But I mean, it's like some people don't believe that, if someone said, the reason I'm psychotic and like I feel crazy is because a dark energy took me over. Well, if you say they're crazy and you put them on Thorazine, they'll never tell anybody else, and they'll stay crazy until
They'll stay crazy, and they'll lock them up in an institution, and
I found out that was what happened to somebody who'd been hospitalized over and over and over again with what's called multiple personality dissociative identity with psychotic features. And we found out, even though she had the worst history you could ever imagine, that she said, I know exactly when this happened. It was when I was 8 years old and a dark energy took me over, when I was in a fire and brimstone sermon that my father was preaching. And he
Oh,
transformed that energy. And I will tell you, that woman who was hospitalized over and over and over again never was hospitalized again. And I know that because
wow.
we walked into the same doctor's office almost 30 years later. And she said, because we had moved apart from each other. And I knew she had been hospitalized while I was seeing her, but I didn't know what happened to her. And she said, never again.
How'd you get rid of the dark entity?
You want to know how? I'll tell you. So what I do is I have her go back and I find that little girl by the body sensation. So I told you this, okay? So she's there, and it says she knew how to get rid of this energy. And she said, I have to do a dance. And this woman was 1/16th Native American, and believe me, she knows this woman does not dance. I will tell you that for sure. And she starts doing this amazing dance. This is the one session. If I had one session, I wish I had on videotape. I wish I had it.
Oh,
She starts doing this intricate dance, like, and it's clearly Native American. She's 1/16th Native American, and she had just gotten interested in this stuff. She says, I'm supposed to do this dance, and she's going to this beat that you can tell is kind of a Native American beat, and she's doing like these like intricate circles around a circle, right? She does it
right.
for about a minute. She looks up at me as if to say, what am I doing? Because she's being danced. She does it for another minute. And if you're attuned to these things, you can feel the room kind of shake a little bit and it gets lighter. And she said, I'm done. And she was never hospitalized again.
Wow.
So she knew how to get rid of her own dark energy. She just didn't know she had knew, but it said she knew, and she tuned in and she said, I'm supposed to do this dance. And she didn't know that. It came from wherever it came from. That she
Exactly. Wow.
was danced. And
Well, we all have the capability of healing ourselves, and it's just a question of, I think, becoming in tune to it. I think as we become more aware, we become more in tune, and then we're going to be led to the things that heal. So it's not, sometimes it's healing in minutes, but sometimes it's being led to
That's
something, just
true.
like we were led to do ALS versus
Yeah,
Alzheimer's. I mean,
yeah.
it was very, very clear that that's where we're supposed to go. But I've had people say that, I just had a feeling. I saw this. And then if you see it like 3 times in a week, I better try that supplement, because it's just coming. And I can just feel this is going to be good for me. And you just know it intuitively. So Kelly Turner, PhD, have you read Kelly Turner's book, Radical Remission?
no.
Oh, you have to read it. It's a must read. You can read it in a day. It's quick. It's called Radical Remission. She took 1,000 cancer patients and who had beat the odds, who shouldn't have been alive.
Should not have been alive.
They either did way better than prognosis, or they should have been dead, and they weren't. And she found 127 factors that it could have been that healed them. But out of those 1,000 people, there were 9 things that everybody had,
key things.
and only 2 of them were physical. So they changed their diet and they took supplements. That was the 2 physical things. The rest of them were they had a sense of purpose. They had a strong social support. They believed in a higher power. They just all these things. They healed emotional trauma. They found ways to heal emotional trauma. But there were these 9 things that I'm like, wait a minute, 2 of these are physical and 7 of these are mental and emotional. So you're just like, wow. I mean, that just proves it. And here she is, a PhD and doing all this data analysis. She has another one, a second book is called Radical Hope. And then she took it beyond cancer. We actually gave her the ALS patient that she interviewed, said she asked us for an ALS patient, and we gave her a few to talk to. And the one that's in her book is one we referred to her. But it's amazing. It's incredible that this is part of healing. So healing the body, healing the spirit, healing the mind, it's all important.
Well, this has been wonderful. I'm going to have to wrap up soon. I wish I did not have to wrap up soon, but I do. so I feel bad about that. But tell us about your conference. Tell people the best way to reach you, and like if people want to support you, which I would love to do personally, how we can best support you because you're doing, lovely work. So teach
Go
us.
right ahead.
So healingalsconference.org is going to have the information about the conference. So while the conference is going and getting that, but if after the conference is over, we pretty much go back to healingals.org. We do Sunday webinars every Sunday. There's a donate button. So absolutely anyone can donate. It's great. We always appreciate donations because we provide what we're doing on Sundays is we provide it for free. Yes. So sometimes we'll have 1, 2, 3, 400 people on our Sunday webinars. All ALS families we've had 25 different countries
yes.
and we have a different speaker every Sunday. And basically they're just learning how to heal. And what's really interesting is our audience, I know we don't have all the answers. I wish we did, but probably like we've got 5 to 10% of people reversing. Maybe 15% have totally stabilized, and 70% are still working on, but they've slowed it down. They've absolutely, so there's no question, no doubt, and we're creating an ALS registry now, so we will be able to prove that the ALS people that do holistic medicine have a much slower rate of decline. So we've got people that are, living 10, 20, 30 years with ALS rather than the standard 2 to 5 years.
That's amazing.
So it's very exciting. And our goal, by the way, we have a goal.
Yes, we no longer consider it as a terminal disease.
Our goal is 90% reversal rate. We want 90% of people reversing. Forget the slowing it down, forget the stabilizing. We want 90%.
We're throwing it out there now. So in the future, not too long from now, when you see this turn around, we're throwing it out there now.
And 90%. Sometimes it takes like 5 years. Stephen Sherry, it took him 6 years. Stephen Bishop, 8 years to turn around. So they were doing this. If you're full of mold, heavy metals, viruses, pesticides, bacteria, stress, and you've got bad gut function and liver function, it takes time to heal that. So that's why sometimes it might take him a few years. Even Manchester, he was like he was diagnosed at 11. He didn't turn around until 18. By 19, he was walking.
Well, I see why you guys are so drawn to each other, because there's this amazing union. Because I can tell, Patricia, you're a little bit more oriented, a little bit in your emphasis towards the physical stuff. And I can tell also, what I wanted to see one thing here,
but nothing works if you don't have the mental.
You have to have it.
I know that's what's so great. Because you keep going back to the mental, but the union between the two of you was like, something sacred.
Oh, healingalsconference.org and healingals.org. You want both of those, and that's really where it's going to be. We're redoing our website, so it should be better by the end of 2022.
It's very old and old style, but we're getting there. We're going to renew it. But one of the key buttons to press on the healingals.org website, that is the Sunday recordings. You can press on all of our past Sunday recordings, and you can look at all of the history of all of those reversals that are telling their stories. It's all right there, and it's free to everyone.
Yeah, and then the Healing ALS, the conference recordings. So we had one person reverse ALS from the 2019 conference, and she said she just watched all of the recordings 3 times from that conference.
Do I have time to tell a quick short story? Very short.
I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna go.
Stop you anyhow, so go for it.
One individual. Okay, they decided to commit suicide. They said, "I have ALS. It's terminal, and over in Switzerland, I can actually do it legally." Okay,
and he was 42.
He was 42,
and he was living in Germany at the time.
He was living in Germany at the time.
Didn't speak English.
Didn't speak English. He only spoke Spanish, and he only spoke German.
Okay.
His wife said, "No, you're not going over there to commit suicide."
Yeah, he said, "This is the
you
problem.
You can't move. I'm not going to drive you. I'm not going to have your friends drive you, and you're going to sit there, and you're not going to go across that border to go commit suicide." And he was frustrated. So he started researching on his own, because he was able to look at a computer, and he stumbled across healingals.org.
This was back in January of 2016. He was diagnosed in December. He found us in January. And he is now playing tennis again. Now, we didn't even know any of this
We didn't know at all.
because he
He's
had
now
to
doing-
Google translate everything. He doesn't
He-
speak English. He had to Google translate
it
everything into
all.
Spanish
Mm-hmm.
because that's his first language. But then we got to know these Spanish people, and then we found out we have this girl from South America, and her father's doing really well. So it's kind of like she got in touch with him, and then we found out about him, but we never would have found out because he said, well, there's no point in contacting you because I don't speak English and you don't speak Spanish or German.
And
so.
he was like, hey, what is this? This website says people are getting better. People are reversing this terminal disease. And so he got into it and totally.
And he's been helping people heal.
He's been helping
other
people.
heal
He's
too,
now
yeah.
doing karate, believe it or not.
I believe it.
So yeah, it's a miracle. So we believe that
Okay.
ALS and all chronic disease, we can absolutely heal all of it. No question.
I'll tell you what.
People can heal themselves.
People can heal themselves, and we can get together and put our wonderful minds and hearts and bodies together, and maybe we can, you and the two of you and I can learn from each other, and maybe we can push things even more forward, which would be a
Yeah, I would love to talk to you again because
I love it too.
really I want to hear more about this what you said, life-centered therapy.
Yes, life-centered.
I tell you what, I will get the book that
find it
you were talking
fascinating.
about, and I will watch your videos if you want. We have a book which was not our title. It's called The 1 Hour Miracle, and it's a fun read. So you read it, and I will look at your stuff, and I would love to continue this conversation.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And we'll figure out the form. Life will reveal it to us. But
Okay.
Absolutely.
you guys are great, and it's been my total pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll
you.
totally be in touch with each other. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Bye. And good luck with your conference.
Thank
Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.